Welcome to my talk, HashiCorp Secure 2023. Who goes there? Actively detecting intruders with cyber deception tools. I'm Dwayne. I live in Chicago. I've been a developer advocate since about 2016. You can find me on the internet mostly at MC Dwayne. I'm MC Dwayne on Mastodon.social. I'm there a little more than I am on Twitter these days, so feel free to hit me up anywhere, though. Always happy to talk to you about things I talk about here today, tech in general, or improv, karaoke, or if you ever want to talk about rock and roll, I'd love to have that conversation. I work for a company called GitGuardian. We are a platform around code security. Mostly we're helping enterprises figure out where their hard-coded credentials are throughout their source code and protect them from all the effects of that. But we also have some new tools that help with detection, intrusion detection, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So code leaks are becoming a problem. Well, they've been a problem all along, but it's only getting worse out there. I'm going to talk about a couple really scary stories, and if it does freak you out a bit, or you think maybe that could happen to us, just remember to cite the litany against fear, and you'll remain, and then you can fix the issues, and we can all go on this journey together. So maybe you've heard of the story. Circle CI back at the beginning of the year rotated all of their secrets for all of their customers. That in production, this caused a lot of issues for clients. The reason they did that, they had to because, well, an attacker had infiltrated the system through an external developer's development systems, planted some malware, stole secrets, used those stolen secrets to get into customer accounts and started stealing those secrets. I'm not going to draw fancy diagrams on all of these, but to speed up a little bit, Uber last year got hacked. A super admin got his password phished, got through the two-factor authentication, found a bunch of secrets or credentials in PowerShell scripts and ended up pwning the entire organization. They didn't believe him, so he went to the New York Times. That's why we know about the story. Toyota, this was a case where just human error, a subcontractor accidentally, well, we think accidentally, pushed part of a private repo publicly, leaking the code. The problem with this was there was a hard-coded credential in there for a data server that contained 296,000 customers' personal information. AstraZeneca, again, human error at play. The credentials for a test environment ended up online for over a year. And unfortunately, throughout that year, real customer data was pushed into the test environment. In all of these cases, the attacker or leaker or the bad things happened because of a very specific set of steps or standard operating procedure that attackers generally follow. I think it boils down to these two things, but really it's money. They're not that they're bad people, they just want the money. To quote Monty Python, I think they are bad people, but it's not personal. They're just after machine resources they can mine their crypto on and access to data that they can either ransom or steal to sell somewhere else. Again, I think they're bad people. That was a Monty Python joke. 2023, we put out the State of Secret Sprawl report from the 2022 data on GitHub. You can go find this URL at the bottom. But over 10 million hard-coded credentials were found in public repos. Attackers know this. They know that 5.5 commits out of every 1,000 expose at least one secret. And they know that this is a growing problem. So the standard attack is get in, find keys to something else that it can either get me to data or machine resources, and then laterally slide in there and keep expanding until, like Uber, you own everything. Now we're in this constant cat and mouse game, literally, with attackers, but we know how they're going to behave. So I think we can take this opportunity to dig in our heels, start punching back. And if we can push them back so fast they can't react, that's a win. That really is us going on the attack. So I think a way we can do that is by deceiving our attacker into doing something dumb or something that gives them away early. So a brief history of cyber deception, well, deception in general. Trojan horse, about 1200 BC. The army hid inside a horse. The horse gets dragged inside of Troy, and, well, we know the rest of that story. Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War, and this is one of the first times it was ever written down, that you need to appear weak where you're strong and strong where you're weak. Always surprise your enemy. Keep them unbalanced. One of my favorite stories from World War II, there was this ghost army. We hired artists because we didn't have enough tanks. So we hired artists to build fake inflatable tanks and planes and machine gun turrets and an entire army. And then we played loud noises in one direction while we snuck actual troops and goods through another vector. The first honeypot happened in 1985. If you've never seen the KGB, The Computer and Me, it's a Nova special. Nova was a PBS television program here in the U.S. that was a docudrama. So the actual people that actually participated in these events were also in this little story, this little movie they made. It's really, really good. Basically, hey, we need to keep the attacker on the line long enough to trace back exactly what phone they're using. And that takes a while. So let's put a bunch of fake documents on the server, thanks to his girlfriend's idea. Fake documents on the server that the attacker will sit and try to read while we're in the process of tracing them. That idea got turned into the Deception Toolkit, Cohen's Deception Toolkit from Fred Cohen. And this spread in the open source world. You can do a lot more reading about this. I'm going to skip ahead for time on this particular recording. But that turned into commercial honeypot, the first commercial offering. So we went from somebody just doing it as an experiment to, hey, this is good enough that maybe open source, we should share this idea and have a general attack plan, to here's something you can just buy off the shelf in just over a decade. In 1998, just shortly after that, the term honeytoken is coined. And the argument here, and it's a long thread, but instead of building an entire system that's fake, building out the entire extra resources for that, we would just take a piece of data that shouldn't move and track it. And if it moves, someone's there moving it, and then we can get the information of who's moved it. Thanks very much, Augusto, for coining this wonderful term. People started doing that, and then in 2015, I think the most significant next thing that happened was Thinkst released they added AWS tokens to their Canary token product. They still make this. You can go to canarytokens.org and get a free honey token, an AWS honey token right now. I'll talk more about that later, actually, because they do have multiple options. And then we go from that commercial offering to mainstream acceptance. And I think that just happened last week at RSA. I was there, and I did not expect Google or Mandiant, or Kevin Mandia from Mandiant Google Cloud, to say publicly, honey tokens are your early warning signs. They're account bait. You can see it right there on the bottom of the screen. And he's talking about L2 security. He's talking about that second line defense. When you get attacked, some amount of attacking is going to succeed. It just is. That's the statistics. That's just how it works. You have to be prepared for that. And if you don't have tools in place to deal with that, well, you're not really prepared. So he used honey tokens here on a slide. So what the heck is a honey token? I know I explained it just briefly with that original definition, but when we say honey token today, it's slightly different than Augusto's original definition. We typically are referring to a decoy credential that someone would try to use instead of a decoy, just general piece of data. This is because, well, we know how attackers think. They went after the money for the most part. So AWS keys look like gold, and if they can get into more machine resources or get into data in your S3 buckets, they're gonna. So how do you build one? This isn't secret sauce. This isn't something that we want to hide. This has publicly been known since the mid 90s. To build one of these, all you need is, well, actual credentials that look like real credentials and behave like real credentials because they're real credentials. So set up an account, give it zero access to anything. So now you have a list of these actual user keys and identities that you can then put in a list and start tracking. So since it's an actual AWS credential, and this could be true of any system, we're just picking on AWS here because that's how GG Canary works with Terraform and AWS. Well, then you're going to track everything that happens to that account, and CloudTrail gives us a way to do that. And it's going to make new objects every time there's a new thing that happens. Trigger a Lambda function. Lambda function looks at the list. Does the honey token is the honey token on that list? If it is, send me an email or send me a Slack. That's it. If you can write that little Lambda function, you're on your way to making honey tokens. So that's the question now. In the last few minutes I have, do you build or do you buy? I just showed you how to build them. That's your first option. And anything you can dream up, you can totally build. Do you have time for that? I don't know. I'm not you. But that's how you build them. There are 3 off-the-shelf open source options that I would start with instead if I was going to do a DIY route. The first, we make that is called GG Canary. You can find that on our GitHub, and that is what I just showed you. That's the architecture diagram for that. It does require Terraform, and you need to have an AWS account. Second up is Space Siren. It's the successor to Space Crab, which is something the Bitbucket team made years ago, and then it's no longer available for I can find, but Space Siren still is. It just requires some AWS knowledge to make it work and make it go. But it's that halfway, I think it's a good halfway meeting point from complete DIY and figuring out some of the stuff just off the shelf. Thanks Canary Token. Again, this is the open source version of the thing they have on their website. And this was first from all I can tell. It does require some Docker experience to get running. If you're very comfortable with Docker in production, then it might be the right one for you to start with. But again, your mileage may vary. If you just want off-the-shelf commercial options, there are many out there. This is just a partial list. CanaryToken.org is the free one. If you're doing one-off honey tokens, this is for you. You put it in one place and forget about it. And then things will just send you that message if that ever gets breached. If you need to do that at scale, if you're an organization that has lots of repos and lots of places where you want to insert these false credentials, well, they sell that at canary.tools. It's a scalable system. Their pricing is very straightforward in my opinion. GitGuardian HoneyToken module is brand new. This is a module on our platform. If you're a customer, ask us about it. Right now, it's no extra charge, but it does require you to be a GitGuardian customer to use this at scale. And it's still in beta. Microsoft Sentinel works for Azure, so if you're an Azure customer, all in with Microsoft, go talk to them. And if you're a CrowdStrike customer, go talk to them. They just released their version of honey tokens. No idea what it costs, and it does require you to have CrowdStrike. But those are just a handful of options. And if you just do a little bit of Googling with Canary Token or Honey Token, you will find other options out there. So you got a honey token now, or you have the ability to create a honey token or honey tokens. What do you do with them? Well, here's some best practices based on a bunch of research that we have done at GitGuardian and just a bunch of conversations I had with people who use these in real life. Put them in private environments. That Circle CI breach that I talked about at the beginning, there was a independent security researcher who at the same time Circle CI was saying, this is why we've rotated your keys. Sorry, we interrupted your workflows. He said, hey, I had these honey tokens set up and they went off inside of Circle CI. I was investigating exactly what happened, and now we know. So honey tokens can help you, if it's a private environment, find out if someone's in there that shouldn't be in there. This is true of Jira or Slack. Why not make a bunch of Jira cards that are just full of these honey tokens and see if anybody internally uses them? But we think code is like the most legitimate place to put them because that's where attackers are looking. Use a 1-to-1 ratio, so put one honey token in one place. If you can scale up from there, you can scale honey tokens. It doesn't really matter how many you make. 1 or 1,000 are basically just a matter of processing time and managing that list. But keep it simple. If an alarm goes off, you want to be able to tell exactly immediately where that alarm went off and don't have to think, well, I put that in 8 places, which of the 8? Make it easy on yourself. Use automation. You can build some scripts out there. I built a little script, honey token putter. It does require a couple CLIs to use fully, but all that will be explained in the markdown by the time that you're seeing this. And think in terms of blue team. You're not law enforcement. Unless you are law enforcement, then do whatever you want. But you're using this to defend. You're using honey tokens to say, hey, I need to block that IP, or I need to track down who's doing what. Remember, this is a journey, not a one-off thing you do once and never do again. Just keep honey tokens in mind as you're building new things or you acquire new repos, especially as you're acquiring other companies and have to start acquiring their systems. Don't list honey tokens publicly. They're going to go off then, and that doesn't really give you a lot of advantages. And don't go hunt the attacker unless, again, that's your job. So, in conclusion, I've been Dwayne, and I'm here to tell you that we're in a cat and mouse game that just constantly need to stay one step ahead and push the attacker back and keep them on their heel. Every round they have to think, what do I do next? Or I'm not sure how to go or behave now. You have won that round. Honey tokens are an easy way to deceive them into giving away their position. And you can build them yourself or you can buy them off the shelf. Again, I've been Dwayne. I live in Chicago. Hit me up on the internet And thanks a lot again for coming to my talk here at HashiCorp Secure.